All right, let's turn this thing on. Hello and welcome to this evening edition of Comic Books Creator Talk. I hope everybody had a decent enough week. Anybody that's watching, I invited as many people as I could. And I think David is in the chat as he normally is, and I'm very happy for him to be here. So I've had a fairly eventful week on my side, but work is just busier than it normally is on my side. So I have less time to read comics. That's insane, isn't it? But I'm still started already on the video I'm going to drop on Tuesday. So I'm happy with where I'm at.
Oh, what were you saying, man? I lost my connection.
It's perfectly fine. I was just saying that I'm just ready to go for my video on Tuesday. I've got the script written, I've got the presentation done. I just need to record the whole thing. And today we're with Michael Oden.
What are you reviewing on Thursday?
Tuesday, it's Peacemaker Tries Hard issue 5.
Nice.
Which is, I think, the best mainstream comic going on right now. Honestly,
at least from the big two. Like Image has some good stuff that's going on from what I know. Like Something's Killing the Children, I hear, is fantastic.
I've heard that as well. It's one of the things that's, well, not on the docket, but I'm probably thinking of getting.
I would say anything by Daniel Warren Johnson is a safe bet. Murder Falcon and Do a Power Bomb both made me cry. Like if you have not read Murder Falcon, it's a masterpiece. It's so good.
That is something I probably will need to put on the docket then. There's Astrobots that's going on right now, but that's from what Massive Press through Whatnot. So I wouldn't say it's a big thing.
So fun fact, the artist of Astrobots is going to be, so you know how this Judex is a co-production between my company and this other company, Global Frequency. They have a mech book called Mavericks, which is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend getting it. I believe you can get it on their website. And they've got Hector doing the artist from Astrobots is doing one of their stories.
He's really good at mechas, but I've noticed he's a little bit weak on the action side from the art I've seen in Astrobots.
What I will tell you right now is that's a problem with how he is being directed on that book. I have seen pages, the pencils of what Neff has been having Hector do, because he'll show them to me occasionally. It's freaking stellar. And so what that means is they aren't directing him well. And to that effect,
that's possible.
Neff stated that like Hector is there's a lot of command and control there. Like he's very much a show me what you want and then I will make it. So if they're not giving him all the details that he needs to put out his best effort, then that's a them problem. But like Hector's art is phenomenal.
No, honestly, I was surprised by Astrobots when I read the first issue. I've got the review up on my channel for issue 1. I've got issue 2 and 3 in the box, and it's just this. At the end of last month, tons of indie stuff just came out, and I've just received them. So I had, I saw number 2 that I had done my first review on because I was one of the first to order it, so I was one of the first to receive it. So I did a first thoughts on it, and I didn't want to do the review until the campaign was over. That probably hurt my views on the video, but I think it's respectful for the people that have supported the campaign. Then there's Battle Brick Road that came out. I've got Alpha Dog issues 4 that I haven't touched yet. I've got my regular DC comics that I cover, that I still want to cover, because someone has to read them and someone has to review them.
Yeah.
It
Um,
feels sad sometimes for some of those books. They just get completely forgotten.
yeah, yeah, and I mean that's really what it comes down to. Is like, there's such a plethora of content out there. It's always a question of, what you get to what you get to prioritize, because there's just so much. Like,
Hmm.
I know for me, John Michael Straczynski is coming back to Marvel to do a Captain America run. You bet your ass I'm gonna get that, at least check out that first issue and see how it
Mm.
goes. John Michael Straczynski was such a good writer that he tricked people into thinking that John Romita Jr. was a good artist. Um,
Well, he was a great artist, but I have a feeling he's in that same
I,
boat as
I
many of them.
I don't agree. I think
Okay.
that John Romita Jr. with strong editorial was passable.
Mm.
But the thing that made those runs work, like that run especially work, was Straczynski's writing and how he wrote Peter and how he set up the pages. Marvel has a loose editorial style, yes, in terms of like how you pen your script, but like, I don't know. I think that the the longer the more that guy, that Ramita Jr. has less editorial, the more it just proves like he's he's not even an inkling of what his father was. And that's not even like a put down, because Ramita Sr.
He was a
defined Marvel
genius.
Comics.
So,
Like like as much as Stan Lee and Jack Kirby are responsible for the rebirth of Marvel, freaking uh Ramita Sr. defined the Marvel aesthetic. Like, he just did. Like, yeah, you had Jack Kirby doing what he was doing, but like when you look at all of the all of what people would consider to be the iconic looks for most of those characters, they were developed by Ramita Sr. Like, he's
definitely.
so integral to that. And so it's like, it's not even a thing to say like, you're not he isn't like half the artist of his father, and that's no put down whatsoever. But he's also not like, seeing John Romita Jr. on a book isn't going to make me go, yeah, let's go get that. Like,
I've seen a lot of people complain about Ramita Jr. over time,
I mean,
and it
I don't
might
I
be
don't I don't
because
like
of his
any of his
editorial
new stuff.
choices.
Like,
So,
I don't like any of his new stuff. He
mhm.
draws faces like they're melting silly putty.
Ugh.
They're awful. Like, all of his characters look like Rocky Balboa, like halfway through a boxing match. It's like, man, you got roughed up. Like,
That's a
good
very
gracious.
sad statement.
It is, but it is also true. Like, like a, I just, oh. Anyways, this is a good looking campaign you've got up.
It is
I
incredible,
know
isn't
this
it?
one.
I
It's
do I do look at the numbers and try to figure out the everything. 138 backers doesn't sound like a lot. That is not a big
it's
number of backers, but the amount of money it's bringing in is reasonable.
so
So,
a lot of what has harmed us in this campaign is, in our first 48 hours we got shadow banned. Um,
oof.
we cleared 6 grand by the end of the second day, and then the third day we woke up and it was shadow banned. And
Do you have
to
a
that point,
reason why it would
no,
be shadow banned?
no, we have sent them multiple tickets, and they just keep on marking them resolved. We have not heard from them in 60 days. We have reached out several times. We have edited the campaign to try and see if, like, maybe this page of art was against community standards or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've done everything to try and figure out what's wrong. But like, to be frank, Indiegogo's had it out for our campaign since we launched. When we launched, we weren't put in the just launched algorithm. We weren't put in the new campaigns algorithm. We weren't put into any of that. And then 48 hours in, we get shadow banned.
I
Like,
honestly would like to know what would have caused that,
I
but
would
you
I would
don't.
too.
So,
all of us would. Now,
Hmm.
granted, I think that there is like I don't want to say that it's like Indiegogo is targeting us. I think there's just something really screwy going on with their UI and their code on the website. Because like if you go on to Indiegogo and you look at their just launched campaigns, all
Hmm.
of the campaigns that will come up are like campaigns that are like a year old and have and are like in demand. You aren't even gonna find any of like the really new comics. Um it's absurd. Like and it's really only in the comics branch is what I've noticed. So I
Well,
think that there's just something.
it is weird because recommended for you. I look here and there's nothing that I would be interested in.
Yeah, like it's like don't like you know what I back. Why would I
Mhm.
go look at this? At the end of the day, I do know that like you know freaking Indiegogo does like to prefer like tech projects and stuff like that.
This
Um,
was brought up by Neon on one of his streams at some point from
yeah,
Clownfish TV.
yeah, like they definitely their big claim to fame in terms of crowdfunding has been less on the creative side and more on like tech or utility equipment. Like, you know, one of the campaigns that was I remember seeing when I launched my first Indiegogo back in 2020 was there was a campaign for like a new automatic bike from this company that had done multiple ones before and it brought in
Mhm.
like several $1 million, you know. Um
But I find that weird because of the name of their company being Indiegogo, which should be more, I don't know, with the name geared
yeah,
towards indie people
yeah,
doing
well,
indie
I agree with
projects.
you 100%. And I do think that it is very funny because you would think that that would be like an odd, like Kickstarter sounds like a thing where like we're going to kickstart a tech based, you know,
Hmm.
like like it sounds
No, that's
on
what it
brand,
was
but
originally, I would
but
say.
Kickstarter's creative campaigns are their top earners.
Yeah.
Um, and
You
then
haven't even tried
Indiegogo,
on Kickstarter or
we're actually going to be doing a follow up
okay.
for Judex in October on Kickstarter. We're waiting on one variant that we're very excited about. I cannot say anything
Hmm.
about it. Um, once we have at least the pencils, we'll likely make the announcement. Um, but until then, it is hush hush. Outside of that's all we're waiting for
Hmm.
the to start up like the pre-launch list for like the like you know save the campaign and everything like that. Like it's going to be a very exciting campaign.
Because
Um,
I remember speaking with Patrick last week, and he was basically saying that Kickstarter was the big money maker in the end. So
I don't know if that's true. I think that
for him, maybe that's true.
I think
For
so. This is what I will say.
Mhm.
If you have if you're an established name, you will make more money on Kickstarter than you will on Indiegogo. And the reason for that is Kickstarter works like social media,
Mhm.
right? If I back something on Kickstarter, all of the people that I'm friends with, all of the people that follow me, everything like that, see that I backed it and how much I backed it for,
Mhm.
right?
So
Now, so
it's a bit of a smarter algorithm in
it's
a way.
exactly the algorithm is way smarter. The UI on how to set up the campaign is absolute trash. It's like there are gives and takes with every single one of these sites.
Mhm.
The kick setting up a campaign on Kickstarter is not exactly user friendly and is counterintuitive in a lot of ways. Um, but like you get some severe benefits in terms of you know outreach
Mhm.
because there's better networking there. So like if I am like a big time creator, my audience becomes all the more versatile
Mhm.
because their extended networks on Kickstarter become immediately tapped in as well, right? So like this is why like Boom did a Kickstarter for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers,
Oh yes.
uh, and it made like 4 million. Like it was absurd. Like it made fu money. and
And
to
people are
me,
really angry at them because of it, but that's separate.
well, I'm angry at them because they overcharged people. I thought that that campaign was grotesque. I had no problem with Boom doing one, uh, but I thought that their business practices in terms of how they handled that campaign were flat out unethical.
There's
Um,
been delivery issues as well for a lot of their products that they kickstarted, from what I've heard, and
yeah,
that's what
I've
people are
heard that
most
too.
mad to.
But like my big thing was they were charged. So like Boom's Power Ranger run, their Mighty Morphin Power Ranger run, was a rock solid hit, and it made them a lot of money.
It's
Um,
probably keeping their company afloat, basically.
yeah, and so they did this Kickstarter thing for the hardcover collection, like hardcover volumes.
Hmm.
uh, what's up, Larry? But anyways, so like they 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 had this whole thing where like they're charging $100 for each of the hardcovers, and I think each hardcover was around, I want to say like 500 pages or something like that, right?
Mm.
That's that is a ripoff. Um,
Well, at
Saga,
least they will keep if they're hardcover and well binded. Of course, that's the other thing there.
but
The
like
binding
like
is good.
but like that's the thing. Saga um by was is Brian K. Vaughan, right?
Yeah.
Um, its first compendium, which was hardcover and more pages than that, was like $65,
Mm.
right? And so, okay, let's say that they like a let's say you're going with oh well you're getting this before everybody else, but then you're like their whole thing was they're crowdfunding this, and then they're going to take this same edition of books and put it in stores for less. It's flat out highway robbery, and it's taking advantage of people's fandoms. Like in order to get the entire set, it was $500. I would have paid that if all the books were signed by JDF or like were signed by all the Power Rangers. Sure, that's a $500 value. That makes sense. That's reasonable to me,
Mm.
you know. But you mean to tell me that to get all 5 books, I have to drop half a grand? I have to pay for a PlayStation 5.
Ah, college
Yeah,
textbook pricing. Yeah, that
yeah,
sounds
pretty
about
much.
right.
Like it's absolutely egregious. And the fact that they went after that campaign and started sending those books to stores and giving them to the stores to put on cover prices of like 75 and shit, I was like, screw you guys. You like it was one of the most unethical campaigns I've ever seen, and I was genuinely angry. Like I knew it was going to be successful. It's going like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has one of the most loyal fan bases in the world.
It's
Um,
between
I'm
that
I
and TMNT, I would say.
yeah, like
For the
and I'm one of them. I love Power Rangers. My son loves Power Rangers. I was at Baltimore Comic Con today, and I got we got a hold of a beautiful Power Rangers spray paint pinup
mm.
from this really talented artist that we found in Artist Alley. Um and so like I get it, but to me that's like that goes beyond, you know, tapping into your fan base. That feels like you're abusing them. Like we know that you're going to spend the money on this anyway. it doesn't matter what price tag we put on it. You're gonna spend it because you're a Power Rangers fan, and so they're like gouging the prices on it, and I'm like, there's no good reason for this. Like at most, those books are costing those guys maybe $10 or $15 to print at the volume they're printing. That's just absolutely
Art
absurd.
covers are fairly rare in the US. However, I keep reminding myself of that because here in Quebec, every comic book is art cover. Every French
Really,
edition of these trade paperbacks that come out, they're all art cover for the
that's
French
that's
editions.
really that's really interesting. I did not know that. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Was it the thing is? I'm just gonna go with that here real quick. One Bad Day, which was that run they did for DC for all the Batman villains.
Oh
Those
yeah,
books were $8.99 cover price in the U.S. The French Canadian, the French version is $22.95 with an art cover. Yeah, that
yeah.
sounds crazy.
I mean, yes, but like at the end of the day, like hardcover, like at 22.99, I can justify because obviously you have to turn a profit, right?
Mm. And the
The
volume is probably way lower for
yeah,
those American comics.
the trade paperback, if it's a paperback, you know, um, square bound, I can get uh like a few hundred of those at you know $4 to $5 a pop on a small time printer.
Mm-hmm.
Go to an industrial sized printer where you're printing like hundreds of thousands of those volumes. You're talking about like single digit dollars or even like 50 cents to a dollar, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be incredibly expensive at the I mean, obviously that stuff all builds up because you're doing like hundreds of thousands of orders to distribute to not just comic book stores but major retailers,
Mm-hmm.
everything like that. Like it's a lot. uh but yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a very good point to bring up, and a very good thing for people that would like to jump into it to learn about, and people that are already into it. Sometimes they might need to start thinking about bigger production runs because it's sad that here we've got 138 backers. It's kind of low numbers, but high returns in this case. But we'll talk about some of that in a little bit.
Well, and it really helped. I think we so this campaign was designed by the people at Global Frequency, Aaron Neff and Kim, were absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. And I think that in terms of tier optimization, they've crushed it. The price points give you crazy good value for everything. And then we also have a vast amount of like high end like collector item things between art, like original art now, and then we have a replica of the mask that's a cosplay thing. You can actually wear it. um and we have a replica of the gun. We still also have one left of the full Judex, which gives you the gun, the cape, the gun, that the mask, and Kim, who was like a professional costumer
Mm-hmm.
at one point, is will hand tailor a cape for you. You give her the measurements and everything that you need, and she's going to like hand make you a
Mm-hmm.
cape. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and so like we've got one of those left, and I think that while this while this has reached a smaller audience than it could have and should have,
Mm-hmm.
the strength of it as a brand and as a series really shows by how much people are willing to invest into it, because we are getting people picking up those higher end things. We are selling the art. We are um, doing all these things, and the average user spending on this is like I know that on your thing it says like 13K or almost
Canadian.
14K in Canadian, but in US
Ten
it's like,
thousand US.
yeah, it's a little over 10,000, which for 130 people is like, you're looking at like, I want to say that's
Close
my
to
math
100
is
per backer.
yeah, almost 100 per backer.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, if some of these don't get sold, do you think you'll move them over to Kickstarter for
so
their levels?
the collectibles are not going to be moving over to Kickstarter, I don't think.
Okay.
Now the cape, the full Judex, we only have one more of,
Yeah.
regardless. Like there's like, so once that goes, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, the Hand of Justice, the face of Judex, and everything like that, all those things, I'm fairly certain that those will be going away once the 60-day closes out and we head off in demand. It's one of those things where those are very high, not just high, like high expense items. They are
I mean,
making those like they're 3D printing them, hand painting them, all of that, and that takes time. And in order to maintain our fulfillment schedule, that means that we're going to need to start doing those orders soon. And it's not going to make any sense if we're trying to have this book out by November for us to keep having those items available for people to purchase. And now we have to make another one.
that's fully understandable. I mean,
Like, especially
that
with
can't
the
be
with the
cheap to
replica.
get a replica revolver in the
No,
long run.
like that, not even from the cheap aspect, building it, because it's 3D printed and fully actionable. Like, you can't
No.
obviously fire bullets out of it or anything like that. We're not looking at
Mm-hmm.
getting in any trouble with that. But like, you can cock the hammer back, you can spin the wheel out, you can pull the trigger. Like, everything is actionable.
Mm.
And that means it's a very meticulous process of putting it together and printing the parts just right, you
Yes.
know. So that's it wouldn't make sense if we kept that up so that people can just buy another one, because it's like, oh man, that you're talking about at least, you know 2 weeks of work, um
Mm-hmm.
like at least. And so yeah, like it's one of those things, like, but like, even without those things, we have just some great tiers,
Mm-hmm.
the
Well,
we've got
I had to go with the digital because the
yeah.
shipping was just crazy to Canada, which is a standard issue with almost every
I
campaigns.
I don't I
So
don't know how much were we asking for. I
20,
think that we were at,
you ask 14
yeah,
Canadian, and it's 22 Canadian to ship. That's almost standard on Indiegogo. Whenever there's a campaign, the shipping to Canada is almost
double
always
check, because
$22.
we actually, Neff and them cut down our shipping on a lot of that stuff
Mm.
really well. I'm not saying to do that right this second because I don't want to like dox anything, but like, when we get off, double check, because I don't think that I don't recall what uh our shipping rates, but for
Mhm.
international, like, I think they did a pretty damn good job of reducing those rates. Um,
Mhm.
but like
Well,
the
it's good
digital,
that the book itself you can get with free shipping in the US. I think that's a
yeah,
very good offer
well,
in general.
yeah,
Uh,
like that was one.
was that you that negotiated that, or was that negotiated through
No,
Global Comics?
that was an idea that Global Frequency had, because there's a guy that is very big in the indie community that likes to back books, but
Mhm.
he's kind of sick of like the stretch goal tchotchkes and everything like that. He just wants the
Yeah.
book. And so we like Neff had this great idea. It's like, we'll create a tier where people can just back the book. And so, like, they're effectively paying $5 for the book, $5 for shipping to cover the base level shipping fee of,
Mhm.
media mail. Um, and they won't have to pay any additional shipping charges. It's all worked into the price.
Which I think is a very, very smart idea overall.
I agree. Is like, Neff is really business savvy. He's great. It's one of the reasons I like it. I partnered up with him, is because he looks at this industry in a very unique way. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the show Silicon Valley, but there's this one episode where the CEO of the company that's funding the main character's project is trying to solve a funding crisis. Like they don't they there was like a misestimate on how much of their budget that they had to work with, and so they're doing like a brainstorm session on how to get more money. And so he orders fast food and he realizes that all of the buns have sesame seeds on them. And so he purchases a whole bunch of shares in sesame seeds and brings in like 3 billion to the company because everyone's using it, because he effectively created a somewhat of a monopoly on the distribution of sesame seeds, which all of the major fast food companies are using on their hamburger buns. Is genuinely brilliant, and like that's the thing, is like Neff looks at comics and that's how he sees it. He's able to find the sesame seed, and it's brilliant. It's really just great stuff.
Well, I'm happy that there are people like that still in the comic
Yeah.
business, because a lot of those people moved away now, and a lot of them are in tech, let's say.
Well, I mean, we're looking at the Global Comix site right now. This is the brilliant thing: is our feature, that digital tier. You're not just getting the Judex book. The Judex book at digital for $10 would be a ripoff, in my opinion. Like, it's a 36-page floppy, effectively, right? Like from cover to cover, it's around 36 pages. $10 for that is ridiculous, especially on a digital thing. Like, that'd be like a $5 book at most, right? But what you're getting for $10 is you're getting the Judex digital that you get to keep, but then you get 3 months to Global Comix, which Neff arbitrated. He got that deal in place, and it's brilliant. Like working with him on this, like, it's one thing. He is my editor and creative collaborator on the script for Judex, right? Like, I had written the story out, and what have you, and he helped me break it down and refine it into a more tight knit script, and he helped me hammer out some of the dialogue, like helped me revise some of the dialogue so that it had its flow remained consistent in certain places where it may have faltered, as a good editor does. And so we it was one thing working with him on the creative side, but it was a completely other extraordinary experience seeing Neff apply his business savvy to this project, and seeing it from the angle that I have. It's inspiring. It's really cool.
It's fun to see that kind of interaction between creator and creatives, because I think this is a thing that we need more of.
Agreed.
In a way, and far less whining on Twitter.
Dude,
which is
man,
a huge problem.
If I could have a dollar for every minute that I see comic we'll call them comic creators spend bitching on social media instead of applying that time to their craft, I'd be filthy rich. like I would be so insanely wealthy. Like the amount of the money that I would make from that would make ISOM one's total income look like nothing. Because
I think it's very sad that a lot of creatives fall into that trap in a way.
Why are we spending like my whole thing is like, why are we spending so much time dedicating energy to stuff we don't like?
For a man like me Ooh, right now I'm really just concentrating on reviews. Stuff I don't like, I will point it out,
Yeah, but
but it's
it's
not what
not
I'm going
what
to
you're
spend the most
focusing
time
on.
on.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You're doing a review,
Mhm.
but the purpose of the review wasn't to tell people I hate this book. The purpose of the review is you love comics and you want to let people know which comics out there are worth buying because you love comics. So at the end of the day, you giving a negative review, yeah, you didn't like the book, but that's part of the deal with letting people know. It's like, hey, this wasn't my cup of tea. I wouldn't
Mhm.
recommend it to somebody. That's
Well,
it.
that's why I never give, point reviews like some people do. Is literally, do I recommend you buy it or do I not recommend you buy it? That's basically it.
Like it, and that's fair. I mean, like I when I did reviews, like I would I don't remember what scale I used, but like I would give people like I think I should went out of like 10. Like I would give it like
Mhm.
a certain level out of 10. Um, generally, uh, but like negative reviews are just as important as positive ones. For one, it makes people know that you have integrity, and that you're not just full of shit and aren't willing to just give everything a glowing review.
Oh yeah.
But for another, it if you write a negative review and you're constructive, you give those creators the opportunity to grow, um, and build upon what they've done so far and become better. And
Mhm.
that's what everyone should be striving for. Is to see their failings, see their past mistakes as an opportunity for growth to become better and get to the next level because there's always a next level. Um, and yeah, like I have always been driven by that kind of mentality. I was an infantryman in the army, and their whole thing was, adapt and overcome, right? And the creative industry is an adaptive industry. You get feedback on something, you can either choose to do two things with it. You can either mope and moan and try and attack people over it, or you can be like, okay, well, those are good points. Let me go and apply them to my next project.
Which is nice when I'm dealing with some indie creators, not all of them, but some of them. They do sometimes do retroaction on what I've said, and a lot of time it comes up as, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah. Well, it's like my first book was a book called Elysian Fields, and the campaign, first campaign was called Elysian Fields Issue Zero.
Hmm.
Um, I am currently going through a relaunch of this series. Like I'm completely rebooting it. I have a new art team, everything.
All right.
And one of the things that I'm doing is I've revised certain narrative points and I've switched up character squad. So I'm going back. So I'm going back through these scripts that I wrote 2, 3 years ago, and I'm redoing them,
Hmm.
and revamping them for this new book, using the things that I've learned over the past 3 years. And it's freaking painful. like, like it's like my books. I've been very fortunate in terms of the response to my writing has been positive from the jump, and that's you know I'm thankful for that.
Hmm.
That's not a lot of people say that, um because but like that and me, I come from a heavy writing background, right? I did industry journalism for a while. I've studied storytelling, and it's been a part of my life since as far back as I can remember. And from a degree standpoint, I have my degree in history, and history is really about building a narrative. When
Hmm.
especially when you're doing academic papers, is it's like you've got what you're researching about, your like research problem, and the whole point is building a structured academic narrative to bolster and facilitate that thesis. Um, so like I've been fortunate, but like I've I've put a lot of time in developing that craft. Um, but even still, I go back and I look at these things that I've done like 2, 3 years ago, and it's like, this is fucking horrible.
It's good that you see it that way, because I
Yeah.
know artists that would never accept that.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
It's like, and like that's the thing is like, ultimately that I hope that like I'd like to think that's a sign that I'm doing the right thing, right? Because if I'm constantly improving, I should always be looking back at the stuff that I did before and either not like it or at least be able to see the flaws in it, right?
it's
Um,
important to see the flaws in your work, and I know a lot of artists have a very, very hard time with that. That's for sure.
and it's like there's nothing wrong with I'm not saying that you need to sit here and say that your thing sucks, but at least recognize that it's not perfect and there's always something that you can do to make it better. And that while you might not be able to make it better now, you in 3 years probably could. But you have to acknowledge the problems there first so that you can dedicate yourself to becoming better.
It was Donald DeLay this just today that was saying he was ready to scrap 43 pages that he had written and drawn already because he wasn't satisfied with it. And there was
Good.
a bit of a back and forth actually with Tyler Carpenter. I was saying like, yeah, just finish your story, publish it, and have the do over afterwards. Do another
See,
book completely
you see,
afterwards
I
instead.
I disagree with that,
Ah,
and this is why. If I, as a creative, look at something and I know that I could have put something out better for my audience, I owe it to my audience to give him the better thing.
mhm.
And now, granted, if this is something where he has a timeline that he has to meet because people have backed and he has to get it out there, that makes it a little bit of a different situation. But if it's an upcoming project that he's working on and it's 43 pages and he's like, I don't think that I can, like, this isn't where it needs to be. He should absolutely scrap it. Like, use it in an art book, use it in a special edition of the book that you do, where you be like, you can, um, you can absolutely, uh, do like a special edition of the book where you have
Mhm.
those 43 pages as like an additional part, as like, this is what I had initially done as a special boutique item for your backers.
Mhm.
But like, to me, if you don't think it's the best, you shouldn't be putting it out. Like there are obviously exceptions to the rule. As I said, you know, perfect example. My second book, The Elysian Fields Pyramid Gambit, which was the follow up.
Mhm.
I had brought I gotten the book back, and one of the person that I had brought on to copy edit the book didn't do an especially good job. Uh, and so I now had my full print run of books, and I had found over 14 like spelling and grammatical errors, and they were big ones.
Oof. Yeah.
And that was just off of like a base read through. And so here I am now, and I have all these books. I can't send them back to the printer and get a refund on the order because there's not technically anything wrong with them, right?
Yeah. That's it,
Um,
it's not a them problem,
exactly.
as we used to say in the
This is
business.
this is a like I had somebody that didn't do their job problem,
Mhm.
and and so then I had to make a decision. Do I send out these books now and get them to my backers because I'm on a timeline. And on top of that, like that campaign, I lost money on by a lot. I was already paying out of pocket into I was already going to be pretty much paying out of pocket on shipping. Because I had like we had like we did not make what I was expecting. But so do I do that, or do I go even more in the hole, pay for a whole new print run after having my editor go going through, because I wasn't going to have that copy editor to do it again. Like
obviously.
they messed up this bad the first time, so now I'm going to have to go through and dedicate 2-3 weeks to going through this with a fine tooth comb like I had with the first book, and finding every single grammatical error and everything, spelling and grammatical error, and getting rid of it. That's time, and that's time that I'm taking away from the people that backed. And so I made a call. All right, I'm sending out these books. And then later on, I had somebody come on, and they had like volunteered to be a copy editor. And I had them come on. They fixed everything. And what I did is when we had that new version of the book, I sent all of the people who backed a secret link to the campaign where they could get the remastered version of the book at like 50% off. Like, I can't give it to them for free. It's too expensive for me to do that for just printing.
Not with the volumes you're doing, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like I would love to be able to do that, but I can't. So like I did everything that I could to facilitate my supporters. And
that was very accommodating of you, honestly.
Yeah,
I know a lot of creators who would not have gone that far.
Yeah, and that's just let's see, we've got some comments in the chat. So we've got Larry is saying, if you go back and fix things, that is just as bad as Lucas fixing Star Wars after they were made.
That's hypothetical.
I think that's not necessarily the case. I think that it honestly just depends.
No, it honestly, the difference here is you're really doing it to fix something that's obviously broken,
genuinely wrong. It's one thing if you're going back and you're like, I'm gonna put in Boba Fett into this scene because I want more Boba Fett because he sells toys, and so we're gonna digitally insert him into scenes he wasn't in before.
We're gonna add Judex, add the signing of the 3D there for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like that isn't really, you're not really fixing anything now, are you? You're trying to amplify something with an element that was never there before. But like, if you get told, hey, this is a problem, and then you go back and you remaster it so that that problem no longer exists, I don't really see that as you trying to like I don't really see that as the same thing, because like a lot of the quote unquote fixes that Lucas did to the original Star Wars films, or that you see in like the modern edits, they're not really fixes. They're just, we're gonna add some more stuff in here because we can.
I'm gonna go in the comic realm, as I have an example of this in the comic realm. The colorist and artist for Asterix, fairly popular and well-known character. I think everybody knows the little Gaul. the original artist was colorblind, and he had huge issues with coloring the sky. His skies always came out weird colors because he couldn't see the color blue. The original Asterix comics, a lot of them have weird color skies all over the place. More modern editions will have regular blue skies. Is it?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's broken here. It's not the same as spelling mistakes, like you were saying, or something major like this.
No,
but
no,
it's
but
a
like
fix.
it is a fix. No, I think that's absolutely, and you bring up like that's a great point. And I'm glad like it's nice to have someone mention something like Asterix. I adore Asterix as not just from it's a very like fun comic strip, but as I'm a classical historian, and ancient Rome's kind of my jam. So having a book about some mischievous Gauls is pretty fun.
What I love about Asterix is that literally the only characters who are really represented negatively are the Goths, who are the Germans, who, let's say, the Belgians and the French didn't quite like in the mid 20th century for some reason. I'm not sure why.
just some minor grievances.
Yeah. Especially since I think Uderzo and Goscinny were both Jewish, so I don't know.
Yeah, some marginal grievances that happened in the mid to late 20th century in mainland Europe, some moderate grievances. And I mean, that's at the end of the day, Larry, that's a personal decision.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's the wrong decision, but I also don't think that it is wrong for a creator to go back and look at their realize that they made a massive mistake on something and want to go back and fix it either. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, my recommendation to Mr. DeLay this week, when that whole thing was going on, is do it like the mangakas do. What happens a lot in manga is they'll send a pilot, pretty much like on TV. They'll send a pilot to Shonen Jump, to Shonen Sunday, all those brands. And they're like, that's pretty much my idea. Would you pick me up? And they say yes or no. And often enough, in the compiled volumes, usually a few volumes down the line, you'll have that pilot included in the book. And there's some times where you're like, yeah, it's the exact same thing. He didn't move very far away. But I can't remember. I think it was Samurai Deeper Kyo, which is one of those odd series. The story was completely different between the pilot and the actual production.
I think that actually even happened with like Naruto. I think like the first episode of Naruto, like it feels very different than the rest of the book, and that's because it was like the pitch.
What's really funny about Naruto, and I always laugh, the guy actually wants to do a mafia comic. That's what he wants to do. But he's stuck doing those ninja comics because those sell.
Well, it's like Naruto was so like that's the thing is like when Naruto is good, it's really freaking good. Like he crushes it. Like Naruto has some of the best supporting cast storytelling in anything that I've ever read. Like, I'm
there's
blanking
a
on the
reason why
mangaka's
it
name.
was sitting near
why
the
it's
top.
Why it's still so popular, even after like Boruto's kind of ruined everything.
Well, let's face it, the anime that honestly didn't help there.
Well,
I mean, the amount of filler was just unbelievable.
Yeah, but I don't blame that necessarily on the anime. Like at the end of the day, they're trying to make anime and they don't have anything else to keep they've caught up, right? So like filler arcs are there to give them buffers so that a new storyline can be done in the manga and then they can go and do that. Like
they've learned from Naruto. I think every anime's learned from Naruto. They're just taking breaks now rather than doing the filler arcs.
like at this point, like I tell every single person that's like, but there's so much of it. It's like really there isn't. Like what you need to do is you take up a filler list, and so you go and you watch Naruto, and every single time you get to a filler arc, you just skip to the end of that arc, and you'll knock out like 20 episodes.
Easy. Now there's a lot of things there, and yes, you're right. Naruto, well, it's a strong thing in manga in general, I would say, where the supporting character is far more fleshed out than in, let's say, American comics. In French comics, you have situations where the supporting cast will be well fleshed out as well. But manga, often enough, it's because they do need to fill out that week of comics. So they create those characters just to, move the story along in a way, which is not a bad
Yeah,
idea.
no, 100%. Well, I think that Naruto handles specifically its character development better than a lot of other series. I think that's the other big thing that it's taught people. Um,
Yeah,
you
there
know,
is something to learn from Naruto.
there's lots to learn from Naruto, in both good and bad. Like you talked about
Yeah.
filler, I think that the other big thing to learn is, um, one of Naruto's greatest weaknesses, and this becomes glaringly a problem at the very end of the story, is you can't have everyone be redeemable. Like there are people that should have just stayed bad. Like Kabuto and Orochimaru had no business getting redemption arcs.
That
Like,
was really weird in
it,
Naruto.
it, it, it was like why in the ever living fuck would you do this? And it's like Kabuto, it made no sense because they beat Kabuto, like Sasuke and Itachi beat Kabuto, and it creates like it defeats Kabuto, takes him off the table completely. He has no other pertinent role to play in the rest of the series. Um, Even when he comes back,
I'd
and
like to see merch sales in that
like,
case.
but like that's not something that the mangaka is going to give a shit about.
No, that's the
Um,
thing. Mangakas will give a shit about that
yeah, but
because they get
Kabuto didn't
points on everything.
think about it. Kabuto doesn't sell merch. How many people buy Kabuto glasses, or
True.
were dressed up as Kabuto in cosplay? Maybe a
Yeah.
little bit after he unlocked Dragon Sage mode, but like the people you see people getting like statues and merch for are like Madara Uchiha, Obito, Namikaze, Kakashi, Gara, Brock Lee, Mike Guy. Like those are the characters you see people doing stuff, not fucking Kabuto.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. But like
like
I said, that would be one of those cases where I would like to one day, if I ever get some opportunities, to sit through and look at some of those numbers and how some people's react to them. Because it's a big difference in manga and American comics. Because in American comics, you barely get points on anything.
yeah.
While for a mangaka, they get
Well,
points on everything.
Well,
So,
that's because like it's still effectively creator-owned IP. Like
yep.
in Marvel and DC, you are effectively continuing the legacy of other creators, right? It doesn't matter how many story arcs Scott Snyder writes for Batman. He is not the creator of Batman. um, at the end of the day, these mangakas created all of the series that they're doing. The
Mhm.
only series that at this point has effectively, you know, passed the torch to from one creator to another, you have two, I guess. You have Dragon Ball, which has gone from Akira Toriyama to Toyotaro on Dragon Ball Super,
Yeah.
and then you've got Berserk with the passing of Kentaro Miura is now being done by his disciples and his best friend, right? And they're literally just doing this to finish out Mura's vision because they were about 80% through what Mura had planned.
I can see that happening if Oda dies
I don't think Oda
sooner
will.
than
He's
we want to.
super healthy. From what I understand, he's in like really good health.
Yeah, he's
like
unlike Miura,
Mura,
where we learned when he passed that he was in bad health.
like he had been in bad health for years. There was rumors he had died in 2017.
Yeah,
like, like this is why every Berserk fan's bane of existence was Kentaro Miura could only do Berserk for a certain period of time, because then eventually he would have to step away from it because getting into the mindset to write that series was so depressing that it would genuinely affect his physical health. And so he'd have to go on a hiatus. it's like
that's
it's like
crazy, but understandable.
absolutely like if you've read Berserk, it's like that makes sense. That tracks. It's like
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain I meant if I was in the mental headspace to write something like Lost Children, it'd probably affect my physical health too.
Unless you were absolutely crazy,
Yeah,
which
like
happens
unless
with
you were a
some authors.
sociopath.
But thinking of Judex here,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not your character,
no,
obviously, but it's open. It's not open source. It's
it's a public domain
public
character.
domain. Yeah.
So and really the only thing in common with this version and the character from the 1916 serials is the name.
Okay.
I was the big thing with this is I'm a huge fan of the Shadow,
Mm-hmm.
and in one of my uh, embarrassingly frequent things where I go and research the Shadow and binges to try and figure out when he goes into public domain and what stories that I'd be able to pull from, et cetera, et cetera.
That is a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah. So in one of my very frequent things that I discovered Judex, and I found out that he was in the series of his first appearance was in the series of serial silent films back in 1916, and it was this kind of small scale Edmond Dantes Count of Monte Cristo revenge story going after a corrupt banker. And the first or second episode was called The Living Shadow, and this character's abilities revolved around hypnotism and stuff like that. And I just remember reading that, and then people, a lot of comic historians and everything, believe that this series of silent films was incredibly influential to a one Walter B. Gibson in his creation of the Shadow. And when I read that and I looked at the character design, the original one where he's in the original character design, he's like barefaced and he's got the slouch cap and the cloak and it's got red lining and everything like that. You can see it. And then with the hypnotism powers, it was all there. And so I had this really fun idea to rework the character. And take him from this small scale character and really play up the mystical side. So I could almost write a shadow book with Judex. And I decided to make him this defender of Parisian culture, of French culture really, set in Paris during the occupation in the 40s. And it just kept snowballing from there. Like the script practically like flowed out. Like the initial story that I wrote, I think I wrote in maybe a week. I freaking like it. It did not take long at all. This thing was so. It was just there, and um, I knew that I had to like redesign because like I needed to give for this rebirth. I needed to give him new life, and part of that was his design. As I said, if you want, you can pull up the picture of like the original, what the original Judex looks like, and I don't think it's on the campaign, but
No, it's not.
uh, but I kept looking at this, and yeah, like there he is.
Mhm.
So like he's got the slouch cap and he's got the cloak, but he doesn't have anything on his face, and so I needed something to tie it together. And so I was initially working with an artist on designing it. Presumably, he would do the art on the series, and that didn't end up panning out. But we did get a solid design down, and I had this idea of giving him like a carnival style masquerade mask and working in the facade of the scales of justice into it. And that resulted in the mask that's there. And I had this idea to give him this special gun that would be made from the blade of the guillotine, and it would be his instrument of justice. Because if you're going to do a character like this, they've got to have you can't just give him guns. It's boring. It's got to be symbolic. It's got to be so much more than just a weapon, right? It's got to be part of the character's identity, and in a way, it's a character in and of its own self. It's his instrument of justice. And so that's when I came up with the idea of the widow, and we got all that stuff designed. And at that point is when I got in touch with Neff. I was having some issues with the artist, so we had parted ways. And so but I was still really excited about the script, and so I read Neff one of the page descriptions I had written, because the previous artist uh, had told me that they didn't really want me to like do panel breakdowns like a traditional editorial script. He just wanted me to let him know what I wanted to have happen on a page. And so I wrote these like very evocative prose descriptions of these pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I read him the one for the first page, and Neff's immediate reaction is like, "That is fantastic. Please tell me that's in the book somewhere." And I was like, "Well, that's just the page description." And he goes, "No, that is not a fucking page description. like, like you do not write that to brick. No." And that's he had me send him the script, and he read it, like, "This is absolutely fantastic. There's just one major problem. It is not a comic book script. like, this is practically a little novella." Um, and I was just like, "Yes, I realize that. It's not like I don't have the ability to." And so that's when he came on, and we worked really hard on the script, and it sings, man. We were at Baltimore Comic Con today, and we've printed out these like little, 12-page preview comics to hand out, like little ash cans to hand out at the convention,
Mm-hmm.
to get people. We had a guy, he got his copy yesterday, like yesterday evening. He comes back first thing this morning and storms up to us. It's like, "This is like it. We like it. We charge people like $1 for it, or if they I think it was like if they purchased Maverick's books from Neff's table, uh, they would they'd be able to get the book for free, the like little
Mm-hmm.
preview." And he just storms up, like, "You cannot be charging $1 for this. This is phenomenal." And I was like, "Well, that's not the actual book. That's just a preview." And it's the same preview that you can read digitally,
Yeah.
online. Like there's nothing different about it. And it is really validating, because it's like we've poured so much into this book. There's so much love into this. I'm a big student of French culture and everything. If you scroll down, there's this beautiful page where you get to see, the inside of his lair, this catacomb, uh, court of miracles, which is this hub of the mystic in Paris, and it's filled with all these French cultural artifacts. So like if you pause here, we get these like little shadow cases that are inside the court, and we have like some specific things to throw nods to like French literature. So in that first thing on under Judex looking on the crystal ball, you see the sword, and it's the sword of D'Artagnan from Three Musketeers. And then you've got the letters of Cyrano de Bergerac. You've got the Iron Mask from Man in the Iron Mask. You've got the Phantom's music box, and even in that beautiful upward shot of Judex looking into the ball, and there's a chandelier above him. The chandelier is the chandelier from the Paris Opera House. Like everything has been done with a meticulous love of Parisian culture, and there are Easter eggs everywhere. Like the police officer that has sided with that has become a part of the Vichy regime that Judex is going out there to judge, to preside judgment over, is Javert. So Les Mis, we're throwing that in there too. So it's been a fantastic thing to put together. It's been a complete labor of love, and it especially helps when we have such a brilliant visual talent as Fabrizio Ugolini, who does these beautiful black and white pages that really, it not only makes it feel like a black and white movie, but it plays up the morality element to the story.
It is a very retro style out of
Yeah.
it, and a style I would more associate with European comic than American comic, I would say. And
oh, absolutely. Like but I think that it does play to its strength. Like people see this art and it's so striking, it's so beautiful.
it is very different from almost everything else. I mean, we do have Ghost of the Badlands that is currently in production, where the
that's
style is kind of reminiscent. I would say.
like that's Razorfist's book, right? Yeah.
I mean,
going for a similar kind of thing. It was funny because like we had been working on this book for a few months. I think we'd started doing art on it at like the beginning of the year, and I had the script ready. Like I want to say like November of last year, or like the first treatment of the story was ready, and like the first like November of last year. And then Razorfist launches a pulp, an indie pulp book that's black and white, and it's got a guy in like a similar style hat with a mask and a special gun. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna be tough to compete.
Well, the thing is, it's different enough.
Absolutely.
That it actually works.
Place in the American West, and like there's still plenty of differences. It was just really funny.
That's a big problem. I mean, that some other people brought up, but it is a big problem when we look at those indie comics. I'll be really mean here, but I've seen just in this week 10 or so manga style comics, and they were pretty much all the same.
Dude, that's my whole thing, man. Every single time that I see an indie creator trying to do manga, they don't get it. I did if you will indulge me. My last campaign that I did was SPQR's Bizarre Adventure, which was a parody of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure with Roman history. We did we took Julius Caesar and Pompey Magnus, brought them to the Rubicon River, and did a recreation of Stardust Crusader Jotaro versus Dio. And Julius Caesar was our Jotaro, Pompey was Dio, and it was a fucking blast. But if you're gonna go in and you're gonna do a manga, you need to study. My entire book was done right to left, all the paneling, everything right to left. The story pacing, everything was done to match Araki's style. Like his writing style, his visual display, everything. I was meticulous. If you're going to do this, you have to do it right, because it's a spit in the face otherwise. If you're going to do manga, pay attention to the people who do it, learn, and do it the right way. So many of these things, man, it's lazy, in my opinion.
Well, there are people who are able to do it. There are people
100%.
who do it properly as well, or
Yes,
they do their own thing, and it kind of looks like a manga, but it isn't quite a
well,
manga, and it works.
it's one thing to take that like style, right? Like using the art style, I don't think makes it a manga. There are plenty of American comic books that use like that Cal Arts Western adaptation of anime manga, right? And they're fine. But the problem is that you have these creators who then go out who say, I'm making a manga. No, you're not. If you are not playing by manga rules, and you are not studying how manga is crafted, and you don't study how they set up story beats, how they set up their pages, how they did and how they plan out their sequentials, you are not making a manga. You just aren't. And that's just how it is. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but like don't call it a manga. You can say that you're manga inspired or anime inspired, but you are, unless you are playing by their rules, you aren't making a manga. You just aren't. Like I had a blast making SPQR. It was very different. It was very refreshing. It had no right being as good as it was. Like it was literally an idea that I had when I was sleep deprived. I was on my second 14-hour shift working armed security. Right? It was like 2 a.m. I was exhausted. And it was funny, I was actually talking to Neff, who's my my creative partner and producer on Judex. And I was telling him this idea. He had like stayed up with me so he knew was getting home safe because I was driving late at night.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 a.m. and I'm telling him this idea and we're both laughing about it. He just goes, all right, man, look, it's like 2:30 a.m. We're both exhausted. Go get some sleep. And if this is still a good idea in the morning, you go do it. And so I go to bed, and then as if something just bit me, I write the treatment for the story. And I send it to Neff. He just messages me like an hour and a half later and just goes, fuck you, do it. It was just like he was so annoyed. And then when we actually freaking started getting, like, I found Kari Salvier, who is a brilliant artist. And she's such a pleasure to work with. When she started turning in pages, Neff and I were just looking at them. We were just like, this is going to be something. This shouldn't be this, but it absolutely is going to like take people by surprise. And it did. It was a fun book.
I'll have to hunt it down probably.
After this, hit me up. I've got some extra physicals and I can send you one.
I'll figure it out. But yes, we've actually gone longer than I normally go for these.
Dude, that's the thing is like, I know we were talking about like before. It's like, just be prepared to talk about anything. I'm like, I can talk about anything for a pretty long time.
That's the idea. I don't want these to be, formal or whatever. And I think people can learn from the discussion we had today. I think that's the important bit.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what those talks are all about. And at some point, I'd be glad to speak with you again. That's really not a problem.
Yeah, man. No, like I'd be happy to go on, come on again. I know in when we were talking before, we had talked a little bit about maybe even discussing like narrative structure and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
and pacing. Dude, like that is narrative structure and pacing are the killer of most indie books. Like
Oh, and most mainstream
dialogue
books
and
too.
yeah, like mainstream books as well. But like dialogue and character voice are also up there. But I feel like the bar is so low for the reader on that, where a lot of that can get a pass from certain people if it's not like, so long as it's okay, you're usually fine. And most people have a decent enough grasp on how people talk to one another where that's not a problem unless they're doing a period piece. um but like generally speaking, pacing and narrative flow screw people up so hard. um and that'd be a fun thing to talk about. But as you said, we have gone over. Um,
It's fine. If anybody's watching, make sure to back Judex. If it's not on Indiegogo anymore, it might be on Kickstarter. That's always a situation. Look at the different platforms. Some of them are up, some of them are down. Take what you can. I think it is a worthy endeavor. And as soon as I get it, I'll review it. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it, man. I really think that it's something special. And thank you so much for having me on. If you
And
guys don't know where to find me, I'm Elysian Fields _0 on Twitter, and Nine Realms Publishing on YouTube. If you like Roman history, I've got When in Rome on Thursdays at 9. And then if you like French history on the Napoleonic War, I do Vive l'Empereur with all this on Mondays at 9 or at 10.
all right. Well, I'll see if I've got time. That's my biggest problem.
100%.
And remember, everyone, keep on reading comics, keep on enjoying them. I'll keep analyzing them, and I'll see everybody later. Bye bye.